I will prove to you that I'm one of the biggest Weird Al nerds to ever walk the earth. What is the opening line in this movie? It's heard on the radio when Daniel Radcliffe as Al is a young, or it's not Daniel Radcliffe at that point, but when Weird Al is young and listening to that radio under his covers, a Dr. Demento show, the opening line of the movie, and it comes from the radio, it's like, Gabardine suits are 30% off. No Life Me over here did the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the TV screen and said to nobody except for my two long suffering cats over here. That's a reference to his parody of King of Pain by the Police called King of Suede.
Nice.
In King of Suede, he plays a fabric salesman who owns a fabric store. And the opening line of that song, there's a sale on our gabardine suits today. They're all 30% off from yesterday. Your boy knew that. And I bet you there's less than 10 people that caught that. I bet you there's less than 10 people that caught that because King of Suede is one of my favorite Al songs.
There are some Weird Al super stands out there. And you are one of them, for sure. But I think there's more than you might be letting on. But
I want to know how many people picked up on gabardine suits being 30% off. But anyway, though, this is the long-awaited adaptation of the Funny or Die sketch that came out, 12 years ago. Directed by the same man who directed the movie, Eric Apple.
Directed the sketch?
Yeah, he directed the sketch, too. Eric Apple directed the Funny or Die sketch in 2010. That had Aaron Paul. This one has a whacked-out, weird, unhinged performance by Daniel Radcliffe, which is the crowning jewel of this movie. Daniel Radcliffe is great. And the funny joke about this, too, like there's a couple things with Daniel Radcliffe playing Al that's funny in itself. Number one, he looks like him to a degree. You can tell there's a lot of costuming to make him look like Weird Al, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I don't know if you know this, Weird Al is a tall drink of water. That guy's like 6'3", 6'4".
He's tall as shit.
He's huge. And it's hard because you see him in videos, it doesn't do him justice. You look at him like standing next to fans. The guy is a giant. I saw him in concert, and I was like maybe 6 rows back. He's huge. He's a towering figure. And Daniel Radcliffe is probably my height, like 5'10", 5'11". So that's kind of one of the jokes of this movie, too, is that, like, if you catch it, is like, man, he's definitely shorter than Al by several inches. But this movie is very much not to be taken seriously. This is a total satire, a parody movie, probably one of the first parody movies we've gotten in a long, long time.
Yeah, man.
That is sort of an exaggerated, hyper-exaggerated, not only telling of Weird Al's life, but also the rock and roll biopic genre in general, which we have quite a few examples to go off of over the last several years: Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, and Elvis. However you feel about those three movies, and I feel some type of way about each, those three movies are drastically different from each other in ways to make a biopic. Elvis almost is sort of an amalgam between the two, but to a dialed up degree. Where Weird, on the other hand, is just like, again, like the kissing cousin to pop star Never Stop, Never Stopping. That's been the movie, the point of comparison I made even when the trailer dropped. I said this movie is going to be very much in that wheelhouse, and it absolutely is. What say you generally about Weird, the Al Yankovic Story?
This I actually did not know about the Funny or Die sketch, the original sketch way back when.
Oh, okay.
And I got a little nervous whenever I see Funny or Die pop up, just because their humor is, for me, hit or miss. Let me say this, in that it is either funny or it dies for me, in the true literal sense of that phrase, because I don't know, maybe there's something about the transitional period from 2000s to 2010s. Maybe it's maybe I just grew out of some of that humor. Some of it's timeless, don't get me wrong. Some of it, I feel like not so much, and I could go into why. I don't know. Maybe because I was more of an Adult Swim kind of guy. But not that this was, not adult humor, but regardless, I could probably write a dissertation on how I feel about that and still be wrong. But where this movie lands is that it plays it somewhat straight, and then it veers off into total insanity. There is a point where you don't even realize it, where it's like, oh, we're here now. We're doing this. I thought you were just gonna play it subtle, subtle but tongue in cheek, so not subtle. But then there's a point where he goes like full on police squad, like police squad 33 and a third, like the third one, you know. And it's not. I'm not missing.
Are you thinking? Do you mean to say Naked Gun?
I'm sorry, you're correct.
Naked Gun.
I also love.
I didn't know if you were riffing on the show and adding the 33 and a third, but yeah, Naked Gun's if the movie you're thinking.
Yeah,
of.
Naked Gun, 33 and a third. Fun fact: the reason why they said 33 and a third, they were gonna make a joke. The tagline wasn't gonna be the final insult. It was gonna be something about referencing a record because it's 33 and a half, which is a RPM.
Oh, okay.
But then the executives were like, "Nah, no one's gonna get that," and then it ruined the joke. But anyway, and I also realized
just for the record, just for the record,
Thank you. Yes, I so wish they kept it in. But it is that tangent is Weird Al related because Weird Al showed up, I think, in all three of those movies as a cameo. But anyway, this Weird, the Al Yankovic Story is a fun ass time, and I found myself. Tongue in cheek, I think is a good way to describe it. With the occasional guffaw, I've fallen in love with the word guffaw is my word of the week, as you know. I have those moments. But yeah, dude, there are times where something happens in a specific way that it's like, God damn it, they're really doing it. It's a head shaking moment, puts a grin on your face, and you just go, huh. And it's a good time, and the 110% that every actor is giving on this movie is pure delight, and I'm so happy that it is. This is something I was nervous about it, honestly, because like I want this movie to do well. I want the story of this great and awesome performer, entertainer that is the actual Weird Al to do well and not die in like a cringe moment of well, they gave this a shot, but no, it wound up being a pretty damn fun time.
It is fun for a while, I would say. I would say for a while.
I think we're gonna have some differences here.
I think it's fun for a while. I really love the scene. There's so much into this. I had a hard time reviewing it, even in the regard of like trying to explain the bullshit plot of the whole thing, because like again, like. The one of the conflicts, and this was one of the things we talked about when the trailer first dropped. I said, what's the conflict in Weird Al's life? I think that's one of the reasons it's taken so long for a movie to materialize. Yeah. I said, like, only him. It's terrible. We started the show with Aaron Carter, who had a rough life, and then it's like the two musical acts I could think that never had a hard day or like never had a lasting conflict more than a couple months was probably Weird Al and the Statler brothers. Just in terms of like positive vibes for these guys. But my favorite scene of this thing involves Dr. Demento, played very valiantly by Rainn Wilson.
Oh yeah,
who
totally.
even looks like him in a weird way, is the pool party sequence.
Yeah.
The pool party sequence is a damn gem. It's got Jack Black playing the radio DJ, Wolfman Jack, Pee Wee Herman, Divine from the John Waters movies, Salvador Dali. I mean, it's a great
Conan O'Brien is Andy Warhol.
That was a good one too. That was another good one. There's so many cool like little cameos in that. Dimitri Martin was Tiny Tim.
That's who was
Dimitri
Tiny
Martin.
Tim. I was wondering who the hell was Tiny Tim. That's right.
And the other thing to note there too, Akiva Schaffer, one half of Lonely Island, was Alice Cooper.
1/3 of Lonely Island.
1/3 of Lonely Island, excuse me. And another third of Lonely Island, Jorma Taccone, was Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow, that's pretty good.
I thought for a half a second, I thought that was Jorma Taccone. But I was like, nah, I don't know if it is. And then sure enough, it is. Kind of weird Andy Samberg didn't show up in this thing. Kind of weird in like one way
I
or
am
another.
too, because they're pulling out, once you bring out like Conan O'Brien and Jack Black, it's like, well, all hands are off. The cameos can fly here. For a second, I thought they got Elton John. Oh, sorry, they got Taron Egerton as Elton John back for a small cameo. I was like a joke within a joke, but I don't think there was no exploitive shot of showing that, so I don't think so.
But no, I wouldn't say that. I don't think that's the case.
In a lesser movie that cameo scene would have been atrocious. It would have been so cringe. It would have been like, oh, this is where the movie's really gonna die for me, isn't it? But no, it actually holds through just through the raw plot of it all. But also, yes, the fact that it's like, I'm John Deacon. What? Bassist for bassist for Queen.
Bassist for Queen.
Which is so true that no one knows that name.
And here's the thing. This is where I get my complaint, and I'm in the minority on this.
I think I might even agree with it.
A diehard Weird Al fan. This thing started to run out of steam for me a lot sooner than I anticipated, and it kind of happens with the introduction of Madonna, I think.
Okay.
To me, with Evan Rachel Wood. From there, and again, too, you can't. I really feel like my buddy called me out for it. It's been in my mind. I feel like Roger Ebert when he complained and when he criticized slasher movies for being too bloody. That's how I feel with it.
Unironically, did he do that?
He did it once or twice. He said, like, these movies are so gory and nasty and bloody. And we were all like, Roger, that's the point. But and that's how I feel with this movie, too. But, like, I don't know. Once Madonna gets introduced, like, and I get it starting to abide by, like, rock biopic structure.
Mm-hmm.
Al becomes a drunk. He becomes a dick. And he starts becoming this, like, egotistical maniac. And, like, I get the trope. I just didn't particularly enjoy it. And then when you introduce Pablo Escobar on top of it, and then when he's just wielding a machine gun in the jungle like he did in his own starring vehicle,
I was gonna say
this thing gets totally off the fucking rails for me.
But it didn't work for you. It didn't home run for you at the least.
It didn't. I'm not going to say it didn't work. It ran out of gas in a way, and it became a little bit exhausting for me personally. Like, I don't know and that's the thing where I wrestle with it, and I've wrestled with myself like the last couple of days going into the show. Like, did I want this to be straightforward in some ways? Did I want it to be dialed down a little bit more grounded? And maybe some ways, yeah. I just almost think that, like, and this is a bold thing for as big of a Weird Al fan as I am also not crazy about UHF. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I'm not crazy about UHF. That was his first and only starring role in a movie in 1988. And that was basically like a sketch comedy type of a movie. I wasn't really wowed by that movie. Killer soundtrack to that thing. Great soundtrack. But I wasn't huge on that either. And it almost makes me think that, like, at least for my palate, Weird Al is best in 2 to 5 or sometimes 11-minute songs. Like, these contained songs that have, like, a thesis and an approach and a goal and a parody subject in mind. That's where I kind of thought. I thought, like, man, 107 minutes of Weird Al and like is a lot. And I think that it's just his style of humor and his brand is better as a contained entity in a song. What would you say?
You know what? I don't disagree with you, but you know where it fell off for me actually a little bit? Didn't fall off as hard, but it fell off for me was just kind of I think it's before the Pablo Escobar scene. The fact that we call this movie as a Pablo Escobar scene,
with a straight face.
And before that, I think it's largely the lack of snappiness. It's a very peculiar thing. I know you're talking more chunkier in terms of like, oh, this whole sequence really didn't work as much for me as I thought it would. For me, it's more in the minutia of it. And this can feel nitpicky, but I promise that it is something foundational to the whole thing, where it's like just the hanging on a joke, and not just the individual jokes, but the wider jokes of like, hey, this is the part where he's drunk now, right? He's a wreck, and he breaks up with the band. I'm like, we get it, right? We have not only seen this we've not even seen this real life template play out. We have seen this biographic template play out at least 3 times in the past, like 5 years, and plenty more before that. You could make an argument that Walk Hard the Dewey Cox story by
A lot of people comparing this movie to that.
yeah, exactly. I was really young and did not get all the jokes, obviously, when I
I
first
need
saw
to go
that.
back and watch Walk Hard, but I think I enjoyed Walk Hard more, if memory serves.
I might even be in the same vein. I might even be seeing the same vein because they get a little raunchier there too. Not that this movie doesn't get raunchy,
It
but
wouldn't have felt right with a Weird Al movie getting raunchy because he
I agree.
himself isn't raunchy.
I agree. I agree. But still, there's something about the minutia of it that I can only. This might even be unfair, but I don't think so. It's something that I feel like is attributed to the Funny or Die strain of humor, right? And I'm not saying that because they stamped Funny or Die on it, then my brain turned off. No, I'm cognizant of that. But if a production company is behind this whole thing, obviously the DNA of that production company, it's like Illumination, right? When you see Illumination, you're gonna get an Illumination movie. When you see a Disney movie, you're gonna get a Disney movie.
And production companies' presence and logos, they make themselves some more than others very well known.
They do matter.
Well known on properties. They not only matter, but after a while, you expect a certain a brand to develop, as you have with Illumination, as you have with Pixar, and some other ones.
And
too,
the brands,
name, but
100%, and the brands play into that as well because it's that's your success. Why wouldn't you? It works for a lot of people, so I don't blame them for that. But for me, I think the humor started to pull back a little bit, largely on the sense that I think this is the type of humor where I don't want to say it. There's some good. I'm obviously a little conflicted here. It's like I feel like it could have used more slapstick and less referencing. Not referencing to pop culture things, referencing to the genre, right? So I'll go back to the Police Squad / Naked Gun, where it's like so much of at least that first movie. Yeah, there were a lot of pop culture references, but those are the worst parts of those movies now. The best parts of Naked Gun and Police Squad are just the timeless gags of when we freeze frame, we're going to freeze frame, but we're not actually going to freeze frame. And the world is still going on around us while music plays and we hold. And that's just funny, tirelessly funny. And then
references expire.
100%.
References expire. They have a shelf life, whereas style parodies don't. And I go back to a lot of and I mean, don't get me wrong, Eat It, Like a Surgeon, Amish Paradise. They're all great songs. Did you catch that little Coolio bit too during the Amish Paradise?
Yeah, where he's pissed off. Yeah.
And Al actually commented on that. I'm interrupting myself. Al actually commented on that. He was because it's kind of an unfortunately ill-timed joke since Coolio just died.
Yeah.
He just died a couple months ago, but Weird Al said, I hope he would have loved it. He's it is awkward, but he's I hope he would have loved it.
It's in good jest. Weird Al has just so much good faith stored up. He's a freaking armory of good faith stored up. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be anything either. I just caught that joke and I laughed. But yeah, no, you're understandable though, because it's not the references that wind up holding water even too. It's just the fact that it's the style parodies and stuff like that, or parodying certain gags. I mean, Police Squad had one of the best, the TV show. The title card was Police Squad in color.
Yeah.
That alone was a joke. That alone was great.
I've seen this happen in other mediums as well, but when you try to take revenge, be careful not to, or take care to dig two graves, which is a strong phrase for this, what I'm about to say, which is that when you take aim, when you do a parody genre, be careful that you don't wind up following that same formula itself and you fall into the exact same trap as it.
Looking at you, Kevin Smith.
Yeah, 100%. That's probably the more apt analogy. I'll even make this reference. No one's going to get it, but there was a video game called Matt Hazard, The Return of Matt Hazard, and it's a parody of Duke Nukem. Do you at least know that name?
I've played Duke Nukem games.
And I played I rented it. I played that game, and it's I get the references you're making, but in making the references, you just wind up being the same thing, and now I'm just playing that game, only worse. Did it make sense what I said? It's you're
absolutely
making,
absolutely.
You're making fun of bad shooting mechanics by making a bad shooting game, but now you've just made a bad shooting game, and this isn't fun. I'm not having a good time anymore.
I'm just briefly looking this up. I'm really stunned. I never heard of this game before.
It's very obscure.
This was in my area of gaming.
Will Arnett voiced the main character, and it's a good watch of a game, but it's not a great game. Anyway, that's a very deep cut, and it's probably too strong for this review because that wound up not being too good. This movie, Weird Al, actually did wind up being fun despite its shortcoming. It's one big shortcoming, but it cannot be denied. I'm just gonna transition to review in our final 4 minutes. It cannot be denied that this is a movie where all the actors are firing on all cylinders in the sense that they are just giving it 100%. Daniel Radcliffe is perfect. He doesn't have to be a lookalike. He just has to capture the essence of Weird Al, and he does so with aplomb. The fact that Weird Al is in this movie as another character, exacerbating himself, or rather, making fun of himself, is great. So much good spirits, so much good humor. If you even like Weird Al, Chelsea loves Weird Al. She wanted to watch this movie with me, and it's rare that she wants to watch a movie with me because of time.
We'll have to have a chat, her and I.
Yeah.
About Weird Al.
But ultimately, I got to give this a solid 3 out of 4 stars for the Yankovic Story.